Good morning, students. I hope you all had a lovely weekend. We're just about to start week 10. So this is our theory session for week 10, and we will be having a look at medical technology. So how computers and technology are helping people who are ill or perhaps have physical differences and require medical intervention. So we're going to have a review of the work we did last week where we looked at the simple past tense in active voice and passive voice, and then move on to our new topic for this week, which is medical technology. So simple past tense, I'm sure you remember from last week and from our prac on Thursday, is referring to things that have happened previously. We're talking about them or writing about them now, but we're talking about things that have happened in the past. So they're not happening now, they're not going to happen, they have already occurred. And in past tense, we can have active voice and passive voice. So you remember, active voice is where the subject is the main part of the sentence. So here, where our active voice sentence is bioengineering techniques invented the artificial heart. So bioengineering techniques are the subject and the artificial heart is the object. And if we want to turn that around and make it a passive voice sentence, we need to swap a couple of things over. So now we're going to make the object of the active sentence the first thing in our passive sentence. So it changes to the artificial heart was invented by bioengineering techniques. So that's just a quick refresher of the work that we did last week with active voice and passive voice. So let's have a look at our warm-up questions for medical technology before we get into the readings, etc. So have a think about how has medical technology helped you or helped a member of your family? It might be a parent or a grandparent, maybe a cousin. It doesn't have to even be a member of your family. It might be a friend or a colleague or somebody that you study with. I know medical technology has helped my family out because I have a difficulty with food, etc. So I have a life support machine that I have with me all the time. And because of that medical technology, it means that I don't have to be in the hospital and I can go out to work and I can study and I can do things like I'm doing with you right now. And that's because the medical technology is so good. So think about how medical technology might have helped you or someone that you know and pop your answer down in the comments underneath the YouTube video. Our second question is COVID-19 has led to online doctor consultations. So it meant that all of a sudden we didn't have to go to the doctor anymore. We could do a Zoom with the doctor or we could be online with particular technology that they use so that you could talk to your doctor without having to leave your house, which is great in a lot of ways, but I think there are disadvantages to that as well. So I'd like you to have a think about what was really good about online consultations with your doctor, but what are the disadvantages? Why is it sometimes better to be face-to-face with your doctor when you're not well? And if you have a think about that and pop your answers down in the comments below the YouTube video, I will have a look at them. Okay, so our warm-up activity this morning is medical technology has helped people live longer and more independent lives. So there's motorized wheelchairs for people that can't walk, artificial limbs, so if somebody has an accident and they lose their legs or their arm, they can get prosthetics, which is artificial legs and arms, so that they can still live a normal life. There's life support machines like the machine that I have that means I don't have to be in the hospital all the time. But what I'd like you to do is use your imagination and think about what technology might we have in 20 or 30 years' time. So in 2040 or 2050, what kind of technology might exist? I sort of like to think that maybe there'll be robots that do operations on tiny little parts of our bodies that humans can't do, but that robots might be able to. So it's just fun to think about where technology might take us and how that might help us medically. So have a bit of fun, have a think about that, and write that down in the comments below as well. Okay, so medical technology is our reading for this week. It's linked in the comment section below, so you can click on the link and you'll be able to see the medical technology reading. It's also hyperlinked inside the slideshow presentation, so if you go into the slideshow, you'll be able to access it from there as well. So when you're reading this reading, I'd like you to do what you did last week and make an audio recording of yourself reading, and then listen to your recording and note down any words that you might find tricky. And I think there might be a couple more in this reading because we're looking at medical things and sometimes medical terminology is quite complex. So if you, on your reading, if you print your reading out, you could just highlight it there, and we'll have a look at some of those trickier words during our prac on Thursday. After you've done your reading, we have our 8 questions, just like we did last week. And the same way you did last week and the way you do for Mona Lisa, I would really like you to answer those questions in full, whole sentences. So for example, in question number 4, it says, what do medical scanners do? Your answer would need to be medical scanners, and then you write what you know they do because of what you've read in the reading. Or if you went to question 7, why has the ultra cane been nicknamed the bat cane? Your answer you would write down, the ultra cane has been nicknamed the bat cane because, and then put your answer after that. And the answer to all of these questions are in the medical technology reading. Okay, you may remember last week we did some work on synonyms where I gave you a phrase or a word and then you had to go and find somewhere in our reading last week another word or phrase that meant the same thing. This week we're looking at antonyms, and antonyms are opposites. So that's why I've got the little picture there of the sun and the moon, because that's like daytime and nighttime. So they're the opposite of each other. There's a lot of opposite pairs used in the reading that we're doing this week. So what I would like you to do is think about what would be the opposite for some of the words that are there. So there's 8 different examples. So if we did the first one, you'd go artificial. So what is the opposite of artificial? And when you read the reading, you will see that they talk about an artificial heart, which means that it's a mechanical heart and it's been made by man. So the opposite of artificial would be natural, because our natural heart is the one that we're born with, that's in our biology that works. So artificial and natural are opposites or antonyms to each other. So I'd like you to go through and put the antonym in for each of the words there for the 8 that we have in the list, and we will share them together on Thursday at our prac and see if we all have basically the same answers. Our grammar focus for this week is relative clauses. We can use relative clauses in a couple of different ways. The first way we're going to look at is to join 2 English sentences. So what we have here is 2 different sentences. A pacemaker is a device for people. And our second sentence is the people have heart problems. So what we can do is turn that second sentence into a relative clause and add it to the first sentence so that we've created one sentence. So there we have, a pacemaker is a device for people who have heart problems. So you can see there the yellow writing is the relative clause. We could also write that sentence as, a pacemaker is a device for people that have heart problems. Both of those sentences are correct, and in both cases the yellow writing is showing us the relative clause. We can also use relative clauses to give more information about something in a sentence. So if we have a look here, we've got a page turner is a device. And then we have the extra information telling us what a page turner does. It says it turns the pages of books or magazines. So what we can do is create a relative clause to add to that first part of the sentence to create more information in one sentence. So we've got a page turner is a device that turns the pages of books or magazines. So you can see the yellow writing is the relative clause that we've added to the sentence to give us more information. Another way we could do that would be to say a page turner is a device which turns the pages of books or magazines. Both of those sentences are correct, and both times the relative clause is giving us more information about the subject of the sentence. When we're using relative clauses in writing, we need to use a pronoun. So the pronoun is joining the relative clause to your subject sentence. So if the extra information is about a person, or even if it's about an animal that's a pet, we use the pronoun who or that. So in the first sentence we looked at, a pacemaker is a device for people who have heart problems. You can see that we've used who as the pronoun, and it's in the yellow writing there. So that's the pronoun that is joining the relative clause to the sentence. We could also use the pronoun that. A pacemaker is a device for people that have heart problems. And you can see that that one sounds the same and means the same as the first sentence. So when your relative clause is about people or about animals, we use the pronouns who or that. If the relative clause is giving us extra information about an object, we use the pronoun that or which. So in the sentence that we used earlier, a hearing aid is a device which helps deaf people. So the pronoun we've used there is which. It's the one in yellow with the underlining. A hearing aid is a device which helps deaf people. We could also use that to join those two sentences together. A hearing aid is a device that helps deaf people. So it's really your choice as the speaker or the writer as to which pronoun you use. It's important though to realize that when we're talking about an object or a thing, we do not use the pronoun who. We can only use that or which. So now we're going to have a go at building some sentences with relative clauses. This is an activity I would like you to do, but we will go through a couple of examples first so that you know exactly what you need to do. So what we have here is our subject sentences. So there's two of them. A phlebotomist is a person, and the second sentence says the ultracane is a device. Then after we've done the first subject sentence, we need to choose which pronoun to use to join the relative clause to the subject sentence. And then over here, we have the relative clause which is giving us the extra information about the subject sentence. Here in our first example, we have the subject sentence plus the pronoun plus the relative clause. So if we use the information from the table, our subject sentence is a phlebotomist is a person. Then we add our pronoun, and we're using the pronoun who because we're talking about a person. A phlebotomist is a person, so we use the pronoun who. And then the correct relative clause to give us the extra information about a phlebotomist is collects blood samples from patients. So our full sentence is, a phlebotomist is a person who collects blood samples from patients. So the next time you go for a blood test, you'll know that the person who is taking the blood out of your arm is a phlebotomist. And we could have a look at that same sentence again, this time using our other pronoun choice. So our subject sentence is, a phlebotomist is a person. This time we're going to use the pronoun that, then add our relative clause, collects blood samples from patients. A phlebotomist is a person that collects blood samples from patients. So this time we have used the pronoun that to join the relative clause to the sentence. We'll also do this activity with the second sentence just as a little bit of extra support. So our subject sentence, this time we're looking at the ultra cane is a device. Then we'll need to select the pronoun. And because we're going to be talking about a device, the pronoun will either be which or that. And then we need to pick the relative clause that is the extra information about the ultra cane. So when we build that into our sentence, here's our subject sentence. The ultra cane is a device. Plus our pronoun. I've decided to use that for this one because it's about an object, so it needs to be that or which. And then the relative clause helps blind people move around safely. So our whole sentence is, the ultra cane is a device that helps blind people move around safely. And of course, if we wanted to do it the other way, we still have our subject sentence. You could use the pronoun which because that is also correct, and then the same relative clause. So that sentence would read, the ultra cane is a device which helps blind people move around safely. So it's completely up to you which one you think sounds the most correct when you're trying to use it. Okay, now that we've done a couple of examples, it's over to you. I have a table on this slide and the next slide, so there are 10 samples altogether. So 10 different sentences that you need to build. So in column A, you have your subject sentence. Then you need to choose which pronoun you are going to use to join the relative clause to the subject sentence. And all of this information has been taken from your reading. So even when we go to the next slide, all of this information is in the subject reading for this week. So a CAT scanner is a device, then you choose which pronoun you want to use, and then have a look at the definitions in column B, pick the right one, and add that so that you are creating an entire sentence with the extra information added on. Now, that activity is also available as a link in the comments below on the YouTube clip if you would rather do that as a Word document. So for our practicum lesson on Thursday, please make sure that you have read our reading for the week, Medical Technology. Don't forget the link for that is available in the comments and in the slideshow. Answer the questions on slide 8 and please remember to type your answers up in complete sentences and be ready to share them with us on Thursday. We also need to complete the antonyms. Remember, antonyms are opposites. So there are pairs of antonyms and you need to put up the opposite one to what is already there. And our final activity where you're going to build the 10 sentences using the subject sentence, select the correct pronoun, and then add the appropriate relative clause. Here is our reference list for anybody who would like to do some further reading. And thanks everybody so much for coming, and I will see you all at our practicum on Thursday.